The jungle meta has seen a pretty massive shakeup over the past few patches, as we've got even more adjustments for 25.13. You need to start running Spellbook on your melee supports, and Nidalee mid lane has started to rise in popularity. But is it really that great for solo queue? We'll have all this and much more in today's video as we provide you guys with an update to the solo queue tier list for every single role. And let's be honest, picking the best champions is fun, but is that really enough on its own? I don't know about you, but locking in Sivir just because she's OP tier doesn't really help if you're lacking sufficient knowledge as an ADC. However, you can begin stomping your way out of low elo when using our brand new Bronze to Diamond course that goes hard in teaching you everything you need to know to succeed as an ADC, which will have you speedrunning any game below Diamond using the tactics our multi-role challenger player Hector has used to climb to the apex of the ranked ladder. And that's just for ADC. Your mid lane OP tier Twisted Fate pick actually becomes unstoppable when you know all the essentials of mid lane thanks to the new 6-part mid lane series over on our platform that our top 10 challenger player Strompist has tirelessly worked on exclusive to our members. Our tier list gets you the right champions, SkillCapped gets you the right skills. And we're so confident it works, if you don't climb 5 divisions while actively using the platform, you literally don't pay a single cent. So why hold yourself back this season and finally get the rank you deserve? And with that being said, let's get into it. So for the top lane this patch, we saw buffs to Aurelia and Gangplank, and they've landed relatively neutral. Gangplank is actually looking much more competitive for the higher tiers of play, but for the average player, he's still not performing in that upper echelon, so we're keeping him in the A tier. As for the Aurelia buff, it was actually even more underwhelming than the Gangplank buffs. We were optimistic it would add at least 0.5 to 1% win rate for Aurelia, but it's landed under 0.5%, so it's been quite negligible, and for that reason, we'll be moving Aurelia back into the top lane A tier. Base stat nerfs always tend to be overlooked, as Yorick actually ended up losing a ton of power due to his armor nerf. Yorick's armor dropped from 39 to 36, which on paper doesn't seem like a huge deal, but he's seen his win rate fall 1.5% because of it. Going into the patch, we were hoping the nerf wouldn't hit hard enough to warrant moving Yorick out of the A tier, but seeing the change on live servers, we're going to have to shift him into B for 25.13. Mordekaiser has been a huge winner recently due to his buff last patch, and should be in your champion pool if you're Emerald or below. Mord does still fall off a bit in the very elite tiers of play, but for the average player, he's a phenomenal pick right now, and we're bumping him up into the top lane OP tier. So that means the big 3 up in the top lane right now are Set, Kayle, and Mordekaiser. So the Briar changes were quite interesting for this patch because they weren't number adjustments, and they were more so quality of life changes. This made it more difficult to get a read on how impactful they would actually land, but now that Briar's been on live servers with these buffs implemented, she's been absolutely tearing up solo queue. Briar's win rate has shot up over 2% as a result of the buffs, and she's absolutely excelling. So much that Riot has had to go ahead and issue a couple of hotfix nerfs to bring her back down in power. AD growth has been lowered by 3 down to 2.5, while passive max stacks have dropped from 9 to 7. So prior to these hotfixes, Briar was definitely performing at an OP tier level, but now that the nerfs have been issued, we see her settling out as a strong S tier pick. Still a really powerful pick, but just not as egregious as she was at the start of the patch. There's even a new setup to try on Briar for this patch that involves building Flicker Blades as your third item, and in theory, it makes a lot of sense because when Briar dives in with her W and is whacking away, she's going to be getting great value out of the Flicker Blades passive, reducing the cooldown of her spells. We noted in the pre-patch tier list that Rammus's power this patch is going to be directly tied to whether or not W max first becomes meta. Rammus W got changed so that it scales better when you put more points in it, but the only issue with a change like this is that if you don't actually max a spell out until last, you can't even benefit from the buff. Well, it turns out that W max first is actually back on the menu for Rammus, and he's in a phenomenal spot because of it. What's actually working best for 25.13 is a W max first into E second and then Q last. This is completely different than what's most popular on Rammus right now, which has him maxing his Q out first. By maxing W, you just get so much more resist than last patch, as the value went from 27 all the way up to 47 when you have it fully maxed. 20 added resist is actually an insane amount of value, as 20 armor has a gold value of 400 and 20 magic resist has a gold value of 400. So this means you've gained 800 gold worth of stats when you have W active in the mid game, which is making W max first incredibly powerful. And then what's currently working well for the build on Rammus is a Thornmail rush into either Sunfire or Hollow Radiance second. Sunfire if the enemy team is majority physical, and Hollow Radiance if it's more of a split damage comp, or if the enemy team is heavier AP. Jockshow third is going to work great into mixed damage comps, while Deadman's plays great if you are against heavy AD. So Rammus is going to be given a significant bump up the tier list for this patch, as we're moving him from B into S tier. So here's what the jungle tier list will be looking like for 25.13, as we've seen quite the meta shift over the past few patches. OP tier is going to consist of 3 champs, as we've got Trundle, Nocturne, and Jarvan cut above everyone else. Rammus is now worth picking back up again, as he's in the S tier, and we'll even go as far as saying that Rammus is now the best tank for solo queue after his 25.13 buff. If you guys guys like playing those more underrated champions, then Fiddlesticks is most definitely one of them right now. Fid was buffed this patch with his WAP ratio being increased and has seen his win rate jump 2% because of it. Fiddle is a hair away from an OP tier spot right now, and any sort of nerfs to the OP tier champs in the coming patches will have Fiddle moving up to take their spot. Nidalee and Kindred were two other junglers buffed for this patch, but their changes have landed as we expected, just not being quite enough to result in a push up the tier list. And then the Vi nerf has left her in a pretty terrible spot for solo queue, as we would advise staying away. So Nidalee mid lane has been gaining a bit of traction this patch, and as far as we know, Veigar V2 is the one who has popularized the build. The idea behind it is that you max your E out first to help sustain in lane, and then stack haste items like Blackfire, Lucidity Boots, and Horizon Focus. This puts E and Q on very short cooldowns in the mid game, so you can be spamming out both and be really annoying for the enemy team. How you play the early game with Nidalee mid is incredibly important, so let's have a listen in with our challenger mid laner Shori as to what his game plan is early on.
Level 1, start trying to generate push and look for trades with the enemy laner. You want to start trading already now because you want to just outvalue them with heals. It is okay to take losing trades level 1, by the way. This is completely okay. This trade is fine. It looks losing, that is okay, because I will outvalue the Twisted Fate with heals. It is very important to understand that you're gonna lose trades with this build. This build is not meant to win a lot of trades. This build is meant to take losing trades and then out-sustain the enemy laner, thus being able to either burn down their health bar, which you'll have to do against champions like Twisted Fate, and against the mages, you'll burn down their mana pool and eventually just outvalue them. Now, I like doing a point in W level 2. This is because this allows you to just jump in and force trades like this, and it allows you to kind of get your mana flow band procced. Again, I will just force a trade against the Twisted Fate, and then back off. He's already lost both of his potions, and I have yet to use one of my potions. And every single trade that I've taken has been losing, right? This is the power of the heal.
So there's just a quick look at the strength of Nidalee mid early on in lane and what you should be looking to do to maximize its value. So is this actually a pick that the average player should consider for solo queue though? It depends on a few factors. It's a much better pick for the elite tiers of play where you can get more value out of spamming out E on your carries and relying on them to carry you. But for the lower ranks, it's just way too difficult to execute for it to be stronger than alternative option. That being said, if you want to one-trick it and spend a ton of time getting really good at Nidalee, you can definitely make it work, but you're going to need to put way more time into the pick to actually make her more effective than most mid lane champs. So we're going to be placing Nidalee in the mid lane B tier as an average solo queue pickup that has the potential to be more than that if you really put the time in. So jumping over to the mid lane tier list now, there's not a whole lot to discuss for the role in 25.13, so we'll keep it short and sweet. OP tier is going to be staying the same with Twisted Fate and Diana, while Nidalee being added to the list is the only change for mid patch. After all, Twisted Fate and Rise were the only two mid laners changed for 25.13, and neither of the nerfs ended up achieving a whole lot, so they aren't being adjusted on the tier list. It's a similar outlook for the ADC meta in 25.13 with nothing of significance changing. Sivir and Jinx are going to continue to be rated in the OP tier, and we are finally starting to see Sivir's play rate rise to a level it should have been at a long time ago relative to her strength in meta. Sivir has been so good for multiple patches, but even now, she's still relatively underrated with how much she's been outperforming. It's just so easy to succeed with Sivir as she's such a great pick for the average ADC player. You just perma-shove waves with Q and W, stack up a ton of farm, and just out-impact the enemy ADC by building a huge CS advantage and coming into fights with stronger items than them. Even if you are a complete noob ADC player, you should be able to reach 8 CS per minute no problem with Sivir, which will give you such an edge up on your opponent. Zot, who's the player we took from bronze to diamond in our new series over on our website, loves Sivir for this reason, because you can almost turn your brain off, solely focus on farming, and just win games off stacking high CS scores. We have a significant meta update for support in 25.13, and revolves around a new keystone rune that you should be taking on a bunch of your melee supports. Unsealed Spellbook has made its way into meta on melee supports after its recent buff, but is it best in all circumstances? Well, we got some input from our challenger support Rhino on the topic, and here's what he had to say. On champs who have typically run Guardian in the past, Spellbook is now just the default keystone rune unless you're in a tougher lane. There is still value to going Guardian in super volatile lanes due to the durability it provides, but if you don't think the enemy has a ton of kill threat, going for the better scaling option with Spellbook makes a lot of sense. You can even take Spellbook on Aftershock supports as well, with picks like Rel, Blitz, and Alistar finding good success with it. So basically, Basically, in every game, what you want to do is look at what the enemy bot lane consists of, and if they are playing something like Ezreal Yuumi, who lacks that catch and burst power, just go for Spellbook. But if you are into a heavy burst lane like Lucian Nami or Tristana Leona, opting for Guardian or Aftershock is still good to do. And to round out the video, here's how we've got the support tier list aligned for 25.13. Braum and Nami will be up in the OP tier once again, as they've been two of the best supports for multiple patches in a row now. There's a good mix of everything on top of the support meta right now, as it's not being dominated by one specific class of champions. For enchanters, we've got a bunch of really good ones, with Nami, Sona, Melio, Lulu, and Janna being a few of the best. For melee supports, Braum, Leona, and Poppy are all really strong. If you want to play an AP carry support, we've got Elise, Fiddle, and Vel'Koz all in very powerful spots, so just a ton to choose from for 25.13. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So there you have it everyone, that was a quick rundown of the solo queue tier list as we reach the midway mark of 25.13. Thank you all so much for watching, we'll see you in the next one.